Investing is a weird thing for me. Like I feel like more and more it's sort of becoming a hobby, than a foundational kind of part of my life. And the problem with investing though is that I look at it a bit different from others. Like for me, I have to invest in order to work, and vice versa. It's a really sort of bizarre thing where like if I'm working in, say, I don't know, pick software for now, like I have to also be investing in software because I feel like the two feed on each other. And I found this to be like really important for me. If I can't like look at the stocks of a particular space, then I'm not going to be able to understand my industry and really like get a sense for um, what I should be doing at my job. Obviously, if your job is simpler, like you're a programmer or something, nothing going on at the other companies in the industry is really going to help you that much. I mean, you might pick up some like best practices or whatever, but if you're sort of a manager or something like that, I think you really do need to know what's sort of going on, working well at some companies and not working well at other companies. And part of that requires like investing requires you to pay attention, pretty close attention to all these all the things that are going on. So for me, for pharma, it worked really well because I got to study pharma really closely, and I saw that there was this really great success in rare diseases that was working. Um, and I sort of just, I wouldn't say copied that, but I guess I used some of the learnings from that and applied it to my own companies, which worked out really well for me. And I think that, it sort of makes sense that if you understand your industry, you can kind of predict what's going to happen to your peers. Now, some people would say you're wasting your time even worrying about your peers when it's your company that matters the most and the only thing that matters. But I don't know. I think that, it behooves one to, if you have the time to sort of glance at your peers, especially because if you're going to end up doing acquisitions, which almost every company ends up doing in every industry, you probably want to be able to do intelligent acquisitions. So there's really only upside to look at your job, especially as a manager, founder, CEO, something like that, that you sort of have to, glance at your sort of rivals, your peers, and think about them. So I guess, maybe you're right. But the thing about that is like, for me, that's a really fine sort of small group of companies to some extent. So, a broad sort of investing series may or may not be what's best for me. Because if you look at like Jim Cramer's a really good example. I think people know I used to work for Jim a long time ago, and Jim was a really good market commentator because he was an active hedge fund manager, and he's still a good active sort of market commentator. He's almost to the point where he works just as hard as he did when he had a hedge fund, which is really crazy, right? So like, I think that amount of work, you don't want to just give like a small like a small effort that people are like, this isn't great. Like if you're going to do a product like a podcast or something, you really want to be great at it. And I think that I hold myself to that kind of high standard. So if I'm going to work on like a podcast or a weekly investing thing, I'm going to put like 10 or 20 or 30 hours into every episode, which, I think other people would just sort of wing it. And I just can't do that. So for me, I don't know, I like to make some high quality stuff, and it's hard to do that if at the current, what I'm up to now. So sorry for the long-winded answer.
So good. I appreciate it. I just, I love biotech as a space, and I do miss all the analysis in it, but I understand it's a lot of time investment and a lot of effort, and I appreciate what you do.
Thanks. Yeah, if you have a day job, it's really really hard to keep on top of all the things that are going on in even one small sector. And biotech's not a small sector, obviously, but it's too much work. So and I have other constituents responsibilities for those constituents, then I really shouldn't be messing around. So nevertheless, there is some overlap. So you never say never. And it's amazing to me to see how people can really build and create their own sort of media enterprises using the internet, um, the thoughts cross my mind. Obviously, I think it's pretty limited, right, in terms of like how much can one person actually do and create. Even musicians have a really hard time becoming wealthy. If you look at some of these musicians, a lot of them, like Kanye West, is obviously troubled right now, but he made more money in shoes and clothing than he did in music. And I think that that's often the case, right? Rihanna is similar. Music's almost like an afterthought. And so even for the most successful media people in music and things like that, even actors want to do direct to consumer products. Like they're making more money in business than they are in media. So I think this like fame and attention thing is really nice to have. But like if you really want to make a lot of money, media, podcast, stuff like that is not, not the way to do it. If you want to enjoy the fame and the attention, sure, then there's plenty of that. There's so many people I've noticed on Twitter that are really really successful. They have a couple thousand followers, if that. But they're a zillion times more successful than you've got anonymous accounts, parody accounts that have a million followers that have more attention, but they're just not. They're not real business people. So we're living in a world of bifurcated value and attention where you can have tons of attention and no real value other than entertainment value, which is value, but it's not the same thing as like, you could have one of the greatest software developers with 1,000 Twitter followers, or one of the greatest biochemists or whatever, people who could really provide a ton of value. And then, somebody completely useless in my eyes, still has a million followers. It's just a funny world that we live in. And I think if you want to prioritize one of those two things, it's pretty obvious which one you'd rather prioritize in my eyes. But, um, ever to each their own, right? So for me, I think the having a podcast and kind of doing all that, like a lot of that just sort of ends up being attention, getting attention. I think to the extent that it can be coupled with like a product or something like that. Like one of the reasons I was really interested in doing an investing podcast series is I was working on some investing software at the time, and I sort of thought that would dovetail pretty well. And so who knows what the future will hold, but like I think the connecting with an audience is really important in today's world, no matter what you're doing, right? And we've seen that with Elon. We've seen that with the old T-Mobile CEO, who used to be really out there and seemingly pretty effectively. Like there are ways to sort of connect with your customers and stuff like that that could provide sort of a win-win scenario.